in this modern age. We want to acknowledge the ministers joining us tonight. So Pastor Anthony Henry, our host pastor, Reverend Dr. Roger Samuel, many of us know him, he's a regular on this program. And we also want to acknowledge Dr. Patricia Neff, co-host of the program. We want to acknowledge each and every one of you joining us tonight on Zoom and those who might be looking on YouTube. We invite you to share the link so that others might get some insight from this program and so that everyone will be able to share in the discussion tonight. We also want to encourage your participation through the chat. Use the emojis, comment, ask a question so that our panelists can address as many of you as possible. Tonight is a very ad hoc program. It's entitled The Dangers of the Internet. And so we have with us tonight Mrs. Donna Barb Agard, the Director of Public Prosecutions for Barbados. And we have Mr. Caron Boyce, who is an IT consultant working freelance, but used to work with Protege Computers out of Barbados as well. So I'm going to give the panelists an opportunity to just say goodnight and perhaps give an opening statement or comment about tonight's topic. Mrs. Agard, we'll come to you first.
Hi, thank you so much, Dr. Sutherland. I'm just really glad to be here tonight and to be given an opportunity to speak about what I really love to speak about, which is cybercrime and how we can keep ourselves and our children really safe. I've been a director of public prosecutions for the last 3+ years. I've been prosecuting for nearly 30 years now. And so this is practically my area, criminal law. And I'm just delighted to be here. I hope I can answer the questions that you have for me tonight. And I hope that we have an engaging audience. I just want to take this opportunity, though, to thank Dr. Sutherland and Pastor Henry for this program that goes on every other Tuesday so that people are given an opportunity to share their views, adults as well as our young people. I think it's a very good avenue for that to go on. So thanks for having me here tonight.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Donna. Mr. Boyce.
Just good night to you, Dr. Sutherland, and to everyone else on the call. I just hope that this is a very informative call. I find sometimes, and that I hope also helps you to better protect yourselves, not just yourself, but also your children. Just make you a little more aware of what is going on and aware of your surroundings and what is happening. So we're going to try to make it as informative as possible, and as Donna said, just ask us any questions, and we'll try to just answer them as best as possible.
Fantastic. So everybody's on the internet. Everybody's on their phones on the internet. Everybody's on the internet at home. Wi-Fi is perhaps one of the most popular words in the last 10 to 15 years. Teenagers can't live without Wi-Fi, almost as if they can't breathe without it. And so we want to start the discussion around children. We do have a 6-second clip that will lead into that discussion. And I believe Pastor Henry is going to share that clip for us. And then Mrs. Agard, we will come to you for a short presentation. Pastor Henry, over to you.
Not that.
I think you have to share your audio, Pastor Henry. We're not hearing the audio. Okay, seems we having some issues with the audio, but that's okay. I think we got the gist of it. It was just a 6-second clip, and it was one of those ads that played back in the day. Mrs. Bobby God would laugh and say, "This was before your time." But it was one where the commentators asked parents, "It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?" Mrs. Agard, what's the importance of a question like that if our children are at home in their bedrooms, safe asleep? And yes, we do know where they are.
Yes, I thought that that ad would be a very good introduction into how we monitor our children's use of the internet. And not only our children, as we will hear later down in this conversation and this interaction that we're going to have, also how we monitor our own use and keep us safe. And the ad asks or says, it's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? And it's so ironic that our children are in our homes with us. They're by their grandparents, their friends, but they are exposed to the world. So even though they're in the physical confines of their own home or those of their friends, they're actually exposed to the global environment, which has many threats out there, which we as parents and guardians, teachers and preachers really have to be cautious about. There's a whole world out there that our children are exposed to. And I was not exposed to the extent to which they're exposed to this kind of information. That did not happen in my day when I was younger. And I was making a joke with Dr. Sutherland when I was talking to her before. And I said to her, I bet you don't know anything about this ad because it was way before her time. I don't even know if she was born yet. So it's really interesting that we are having this discussion right now. And especially in this this COVID-19 global pandemic, where it is more rampant because we as internet users are now constantly on our phones, on our devices, on our iPads and our computers. And so we expose ourselves to the threats that are out there and the dangers that are out there. So as I was doing research for this presentation, I discovered that 91%, it is said, of today's online adults are on social media. Do you understand that? 91% of us are on social media. And social media and the contents of it pervades our lives totally, every aspect of our lives, our home life, our school life. There's information out there that can be had in relation to our school records, our medical records, our banking information. And so when we give a child a computer or an iPad or a phone, we can't just give them that and have no caution or warnings attached to those devices, because they are impressionable minds, and we really have to be able to guard our minds and our hearts with what we digest and the things we read and the things we see. And so this is very timely that we should be having this kind of conversation right now. Research has shown that, I'm going to quote here, research has shown this, and it's given a definition of social media. And it says social media is a fundamental pillar of communication in today's society, revolutionizing how the world does business, learns about and shares news, and instantly engages with friends and family. It is a digital goldmine of potential evidence profiles. It lists of friends, group memberships, messages, chats, logs, tweets, photos, videos, tags, GPS locations, check-in, login timetables, and more. So if you put that in perspective, and at 10 o'clock and you're asking, do you know where your child is? My child is upstairs on his or her iPad or computer playing a game or surfing the internet. But what is the content of what they're looking at and what they're seeing? And so, as I said, we have to guard against that. Social networking has 4 main characteristics that's attached to digital media. It's searchable. In other words, anyone, anywhere, anytime can find it once you've posted it. It's forever. It does not go away. So something that you post today, 12 years down the road, somebody somewhere searching from some arbitrary something would be able to find something that you posted 20 years ago or 25 years ago. It doesn't go away. It keeps spreading. It's distributed. It's copied. It's redistributed. It can be changed. It can be tampered. And we'll see that when we talk about things like child pornography, how some criminals will use the image of a child's face and attach it to a body part that does not belong to that child. As I said, it can be copied and changed, and it has a global and invisible audience. So when you think of that, you understand the threat that we're under. I'm going to pause there to see if anybody has any other comments to make before I proceed.
Yeah, no questions as yet. I think everybody is just going to be listening for the information first.
Okay.
But Mr. Boyce is having some internet issues, so he had to turn off his camera to ensure he can still contribute. So,
Okay.
Karen, I want to come to you before Donna continues and talk about digital footprints and why we have to be so circumspect about what we put out there. And so, there are a lot of scams, etc. Don Mrs. Barbegard spoke about, the invisible audience. Who is watching us when we're online? As an IT person, they're now selling those tiny little devices that you can put over your camera. Why do we need things like this? Who's watching us? Why is it important to guard our technology and even the hardware that we use with our technology?
Well, it's funny that you put it that way, Dr. Sutherland, because it just reminded me of I recently just updated my iPhone and iOS 14. If you're updated to iOS 14, um, my wife has a tendency of saying, the phone is always listening to you. And I think that this time it actually might have proved her right because when you're using any app now, it asks your permission to actually say if you want them to track what your data usage. So now you have the option to actually stop that in the new iOS update that just came out for your iPhone. So the truth is that everyone's watching, everyone's listening. It's a world wide web, so everyone is watching you. And everything as Donna was saying just now, everything is out there for kind of for the taking, and sometimes not for the good taking as well too. If we want to research someone, we go look at them up on Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat. Um, if you've ever heard of I don't know how many people have ever heard of the term metadata, but when you take a picture, there's data that is embedded into the actual picture, which tells you your location, whether in terms of latitude and longitude, when you took the picture, where you took the picture, all that sort of stuff. So you have to be really careful in what information you post out there. There are different ways of attacks, as Dr. Sutherland was just mentioning, phishing attacks. Those are designed for end users like us. Like when you get an email and it says, "Hey, you just won a brilliant iPhone 12." No, though, make sure to check that first. Just don't get dragged into the fact that it says iPhone 12 or you just won 10,000. Your family in Nigeria just left you $1 million. Stuff like that draws people in because we don't really pay attention. Um, and that's how we get caught up in what it is that and get drawn into these attacks. And what we don't realize is that from the time that we get drawn into it, let's take one of these phishing attacks, which is designed for to steal your data, steal your user information. You work for an organization, you see that you just want an iPhone 12 because you've wanted this iPhone 12, so you just want to click and see, and you think it's just a harmless email. But then you go in and you click on the email, and all of a sudden now all of that code, malicious code, is now spread to your entire organization, and you can bring down your entire network. So imagine doing something like that, and you work for something like an offshore bank. So or even an insurance company. A lot of people's data and information gets out there, and then that can be sold to use for other things, credit card fraud. Um, Stealing people's identities to get any sort of like opening false bank accounts and that sort of stuff. Back in the like some time ago when I was first starting out in IT, a couple of our friends used to have this game where we would just go and search your name, type in Karen Voice on Google and see what actually comes up. And sometimes you're like, that person's the murderer, though. That person did this, that person did that. So imagine how easy it is for people to really steal your identity and put it out there just for the selling or for any misuse.
I love what you just said there about the phishing attacks. I remember a few years ago there was a case study, and just to show that it's not just about banks or insurance companies, but anybody. So I like that you use those examples. But even in sport, the Canadian Center for Ethics in Sport had their system hacked, and a lot of personal information was leaked. There was another agency in sports that was leaked a few years back. And, there was this big thing on the television about Serena Williams and some other high profile
Huh?
sport athletes information
No, no,
being
no. I'm on the
to the
Zoom
public.
meeting. I just logged into the
Um,
meeting.
Additionally, companies in Australia, university in Australia, their information was hacked. And so it is how the information is being stolen from across varying organizations. So Don, I want to come back to you, Mrs. Barb Agard. And forgive us tonight, we're being very official because Mrs. Barb Agard is here in her official capacity. And so we just, want to make sure we give that respect where it is due. You did in the prep session give us an example of, I think you won something. You want to?
Yes, I did. Well, apparently recently, after doing absolutely nothing at all, I was told, I was sent a message on my cell phone to say I had won a Mercedes-Benz, an $80,000, 80,000 US dollars in money. So I was wondering what I did to deserve that, but we have to be so careful with receiving those types of emails and engaging the person long enough that we hand over our personal information, not really checking the background of these people or checking back to see, what company they represent or if anything that they're saying is actually factual or legitimate. So I'm so glad that Karen covered so much of what, we were going to say in terms of the kind of cyber crimes that are out there. And we have to remember that the information is so free to grab by anyone. And so we have to be really careful, as I said, what we post and who we engage. I can see you. Let's just take this example. I can see you. Based on what you've posted, I know your name. I know your date of birth. I know who you're connected to. I watch who you tag. I know Karen mentioned that a little while ago. So if you're on Facebook, for example, and you have a list in your about, there is an about tab that tells you about the person that you're looking at. And you have a list of, well, this is my husband, this is my mother, this is my sister, this is my brother, this is my aunt, this is my cousin. So what you do is when investigators in general or people are looking for information, they go to the people that you've tagged. And so they find out a lot more information about you than you intended to share, obviously. They go to your friends. And if it is that you are a little more reluctant to share pictures, then your friends have shared pictures. So if you go to the person that I have tagged, and Sheila Brown now has shared 25 pictures of us liming on the beach half naked because you're wearing your bikini on the beach, that's where to wear it. There are other people who are searching the internet who don't have your best interests at heart and who are looking to do nefarious things and who do have a criminal intention. So you have to be careful with those things. You can get medical records if you're not careful. That's the kind of information. People can look at your profile and they can accumulate information about you. If you are posting everything you like to do, then you are giving somebody information of the kind of interests and hobbies you have. And it's easier for them to engage you in conversation because they know what your hobbies are and they know what your likes are. If I tell somebody, well, everybody who knows me know my favorite color is purple, that's neither here or there. So if I post that, it's no big thing. But if you are posting places you've gone and charities you've contributed to and places you like to hang out, what you're doing is for the person who is trolling the internet for unsuspecting victims, they're gathering information about you every time you post a picture, every time you post a favorite quote or a comment, they're gathering information about you. They'll gather information. Who's your last boyfriend? Who's your last girlfriend? What teacher don't you like at school? Because you took the time to post for everybody to hear. I mean, why is it important for somebody sitting in Timbuktu to know that you don't like your class 1 teacher? Why is it important for somebody to know what you've eaten? And I mean, there are people who are extroverts. I'm not knocking that because a lot of people say, well, that's because Donna, you're so private. I am, but there's a reason I am, because you try to control the amount of information that you give out there. Why would I post a picture of my children in their school uniforms? Why does somebody have to know my daughter or my son or my grandkids go to this particular school? That's too much information to be posting on the internet. And so you invite comments like an arbitrary comment from somebody who's you haven't necessarily befriended them or clicked or accepted their friend requests, because there are lots of people that you can just check their public image or public profile, and somebody's going to write for somebody who is feeling insecure at home, or who's having a problem with their parents or their guardians, and somebody's going to write, "You're absolutely stunning in this photograph." And then they wait for a week because they have nothing better to do. They're sitting on their computers. They have all the time on their hands to be patient. And so in the interim, they're grooming children for future crimes to be committed. You understand? So then it gets to, as I said, "You're beautiful." And that continues. "So what did you do today?" And a child who's bored at home, or who had a fight with their parents 2 minutes ago, may decide, "You know what? This is harmless. I'm sitting in my room at my desk. I don't know who this person is. It couldn't hurt to chat." And weeks of that goes on. And so now he knows where you live. Now he knows where you like to eat. Now he knows where you would like to go. And the next thing that may happen is, "We've been talking for such a long time. Why don't you meet me at Sheraton? It's no harm done. Your parents don't need to know." Those are the things that start when people have so much information on you that they know what to target in their conversations. And if I'll pause there, I don't know if Kieran wants to jump in now at this point.
Sure. Let's use a practical example. I apologize, Dr. Sutherland. I'm putting you in a chopping block. So I might sign on to this call, and I'm just gonna be real with it and think that Dr. Sutherland, are kind of cute. Let me see what she's into. And I can go and I can Google and I can see all these things that she's into, and all these pictures that are posted on YouTube about her, on Google about her. And I might come up on this picture that has her in a nice white dress, and I'm like, I wonder if she's married, and then start going and going. Or you could end up with someone who unfortunately might, as Donna was saying, might be some sort of pedophile, and then realize that, or start searching and saying, I wonder if she has a daughter that is just as good looking or whatever, and start looking for her as well too. Based on her, I'm not going to give out the information, but based on her work, or even as as Donna was saying just now, based on her job, someone might decide that, hey, I don't like what happened to me in court today. I'm coming for you. And that's the realization. Sasha might make a decision in her job, and the person not like it, and then they decide they're coming for her. So then they start targeting their her family and children. And let's say, how many of you have children who are on Snapchat? Like, everyone's person is on Snapchat, but how many of you pay attention to the fact that Snapchat actually has a geotagging system, a geolocation system, that all your friends can tell where you are if you have it left on? And sometimes we don't think or pay attention to these things, and we just think as just harmless. Oh, I just on Snapchat, I just taking pictures and video and what's not. No, you're not just taking pictures and video, and these are some of the harsh realities and truth we actually have to teach our kids, because as Donnie was saying and alluding to earlier, when you take a picture or a video of someone, now I know what your house looks like. I know where to come and find you. It's easy to navigate certain things. Like, I can look here at some of these pictures and be as profile pictures that some people have up. And if I was really, really wanted to be malicious, I can say, okay, so if I need to navigate, okay, I can see such and such, I can see certain things that's going on. The thing about it is that we don't say these things for you to then become paranoid about the information you put out there, but we want you to be aware of what you actually put out there. And anyone is a target. Anyone can be a target. What can happen, and one of the things that can happen is that there's some things called bots, and what you can become of is like a whole member of a group of bots, just dummy computers to make a cyber attack more invasive and to hide out someone's trail. And when and if you're not protected, whether it be virus solutions or malware solutions in terms of what sites you're going on, what you're clicking on, what you're downloading, because a lot of people like to download different movies and that sort of stuff. You have to be careful of what you're downloading, where it's going.
I think I think he got
I see your camera.
Yeah, I think you got stuck there a minute, but that's okay.
Oh, okay.
So we spoke a bit about the dangers of the internet, or three common mistakes, I should say, or a few mistakes that people make by putting too much information out there. I want to come back to teenagers just to launch into the dangers of the internet outside of what we've just spoken about generally. So we spoke about phishing attacks and email and malware. So I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, oh, okay, but my husband or my IT person would have put that software on. But the reality is, as Mrs. Barbigard was saying, the criminals are getting more sophisticated. And so I remember Criminal Minds. I think a lot of us know that show. I remember this one episode where one of the agent's niece was kidnapped for using the same scenario that you'd given Mrs. Barbigard. Someone had liked the photo, started speaking to them, cute young boy, met them at the mall the first time, but the stepdad was there, so nothing happened. But the other time, he sent a female to pick them up to go to a concert. And so they get into this car and they start going, but the friend goes, hold on, this is not the way to get to the stadium. And so this guy comes up from the back seat, injects them, and all of a sudden they go underground in inverted commas. You see their photos up on the internet, on a pornography site, on the dark web. Is it really that simple, Mrs. Barbigard, for a common mistake that people use to post internet or, to try to make friends? We have so many dating sites, etc. Is it really that easy to move from what we think is is not as harmful to literally being kidnapped or to be in the sex trade, etc.?
Because it doesn't happen as often in Barbados, we don't take it seriously, but it happens across the world. And so it is not movie. Yes, you were watching a movie, but that's real life. That's actually what's happening. And as I said, what criminals target, because they have two things going for them. They have all the time on their hands, and they are accustomed to doing this. Most of them who've been grooming children a long time, they're accustomed. They have two things going for them, time and patience. And some of the ones that get away with it are usually the ones that are most patient, because they know what their goal is in the end. And so, yes, it is a reality that you can move from your bedroom on your computer to visiting somebody with whom you have not shared that information with your parents or your guardians. And it is because a lot of the people who find themselves, whether they're adults or children in that situation, are people who have vulnerabilities that have been exposed. And so that's what criminals target. So it's easy to say, well, that can never happen to me, or that would never happen to my child, because you may have educated your child on those things. But for somebody who, for example, is living in a home where her mother or her father, she's getting beaten every day, there's abuse going on in the home, they're running away from something to something. So they're running away from something that's happening to them in the home, which they may not be able to digest or handle. They've had enough of that, and they're running to someone who's going to give them the attention they need, or someone who's going to say, don't worry about that. If you have a problem, just share that with me, we can talk. And that someone is going to take their time. It's not going to happen overnight. That's why it's easy for us to get on our high horse and say, that's never going to happen to me. But even right now, our own children in Barbados, where we are, have friends with whom they share their business with, because they're to have friends. We're human beings. We interact with each other because that's how God made us, to have human interaction, which is why COVID is just so difficult to digest, because we don't have that same human interaction and human connection that we are accustomed to. So children who are not in an environment that is welcoming at home will tend to go elsewhere for that attention. And so that's where it starts. But what we also have to realize is when that happens, we can't treat the child or the person as responsible for. They made a mistake, yes, but most of the time we get down on the victim. How could you have? Couldn't you have seen this coming? How could you possibly have put yourself into this situation? So it moves from in the environment, safe environment of our home, to now you're out there meeting somebody who is a total stranger to you and having that interaction with them. And sometimes, as studies have shown, they don't come back home. So now they're on the street, they're being prostituted, they're in the sex trade, they're being sold. So those things are real. It may not have hit Barbados in the way that we see it in the world or on movies, but it is very real. And so we have to be constantly teaching our children to be cautious. I mean, as I always say, sometimes teenagers have no filter. And that's a real thing. They want to share, they want to interact. They don't see the dangers of that, So those are things that we have to guard against. So we have to choose the information that we put out there very carefully.
So then what can parents do to mitigate against these dangers? And I'm posing that question to the two panelists. I'm going to start with Mr. Boyce. What can you do as parents to mitigate against some of these potential dangers for your children and even for yourself?
One of the things I was just thinking about was social engineering. You are the target. People are going to try to hack you first to get the information, your passwords, your credit card information, everything and such. And that's one of the real things that we have to pay attention to, because I can come up and I can be friendly and I can ask you things like, so when is your birthday? Oh, you're born in January? Oh, so you're like I don't even know these signs are. If you're born in February, you're a Pisces. Oh, me too. So now I have your birthday. I can come up and I can ask you. So what was your mom like growing up? What was her name again? Oh, her name was this person. Oh, now I have your mom's information. Which a lot of password secret questions ask you what's your mother's maiden name. Also, did you have pets when you were growing up? Oh, you had a pet that was called I don't know, a pet fish named Rachel. Oh, cool. I now have information like that. So you get a lot of these things coming up that in terms of be careful of how you give out information. Don't give out too much information. Be really vague, because people can be trusting, but then they might have another devious side that they're trying to get across to you. In terms of your children, you want to trust them and say, oh, I trust my child is doing the right thing and what's not. That's great, that's fine. Check behind them. Sorry, if they're teenagers and they're growing up, check behind them, see what it is that they're doing. You don't necessarily need to come out and say, oh, well, I saw you went on this site and did it. No, but at least know what it is that they're doing. They are, if you want to get really basic with it, you don't need to be an IT guru, but most basic routers allow you to see any website information that your your children are going on, and what is actually passing through your internet at home. So that's the first thing. Do your own research and do your own channels. Check in with them. Social engineer them to find out what it is that they're doing, so that you get the answers that you're looking for. Because you don't want them to think, oh, well, they're just on Snapchat. But next thing you know, this boy that with this fine body or whatever that they're attracted to and they're talking to, and he coming up from someplace in Nigeria and telling them that you can come down here and they'll send a ticket for you. And as far-fetched as it is, some of those are things that actually happen, and people take the bait, and then next thing you know, they're gone. So just be careful and be aware of what it is that's out there. Install apps on their phones. Nothing wrong with it. Who buy the phone? Not them. You buy the phone. Install the apps on their phones. Track them. See what it is that's going on. Eventually, you will have to let go and let them make their own choices. But teach them along the way growing up. Hey, this is the things that we need you to do to be careful out there.
May I just add that I just like to make a reference to a research paper that one of my colleagues did. He is a cybersecurity expert. He doesn't live here anymore. He migrated, but I was reading his paper the other day as I was getting ready for this, and I just want to read a part of his paper for you, just to show you his suggestion in terms of introducing cybersecurity education to our children in schools. So it's an excellent research paper. It's called Should Schools Institute Cybersecurity Awareness Programs for Young People as part of their curriculum? And so his research paper deals with a lot of that. And it says, the mitigating factor of how this act is able to be executed by many is the fact that the younger generation is unaware of the privacy settings within, sorry, somebody's muted. Meg, shall I go on? Right, the importance of young people understanding the harmful consequences of something like bullying needs to be addressed. While scientists have proven that the development of the human brain during adolescence prevents this age group from rational thinking, educating them on the effects of cyberbullying is critical. A substantive change in our youth cybersecurity awareness posture is required and calls for a collaborative effort by all parties involved for effectiveness and efficiency. Within the current school curriculum, there are mandatory classes for mathematics, languages, history, sciences. These subjects were developed and implemented as an educational requirement based on the past needs of society. In fact, in the United States, the two former administrations, I think it was President Obama, right, made mention that there was a strategy implemented in the 1950s for science and mathematics to be included in the educational curriculum. Notwithstanding, those core subjects are essential. Cyber, which is considered a science subject, is now a current and future necessity for all. Hence, implementing new alternatives to learning and the culture of cyberspace and its threats are necessary in education. And that was a research paper done by one of my colleagues, Mr. Neil Hines, who now doesn't live in Barbados, but the paper was really well written. And so I just wanted to read that just to show you that this is something, just as he said, like maths and English, it's a real issue that we need to be educating our children about from the time that they are young, so that they have the same awareness to which Kiran just referred.
Yeah, we have a question in the chat, but before we get there, Mrs. Babigard, because we're on the topic of cyber security, I just want to backpedal a bit. Again, keeping our youth in mind, but it can happen to anybody. The whole concept of cyberbullying and the link to suicide rates. We spoke about that as well, and we want parents to know that there is a reason that we need to check up on their children. As Karen said, you know, you bought the phone, there has to be some access to it. And, you know, I have a 17-year-old, but ever so often, if I could get it out her hands, I would probably try to take the phone and go through it and see what's happening, etc. And it's not just about our children being bullied, but are they potentially bullying other children? So can you just talk to us a bit about cyberbullying and linked to suicide rates?
The same research paper to which I just referred actually has a paragraph dealing with that in terms of statistics. And if I may again, because this is right on point, it says the issue of cyberbullying is another challenge faced by our youth, and it has even led to some consequences of suicide. The act of cyberbullying is mostly attributed to teens and mainly takes place via social media platforms. This is a quote that I'm taking out of his research paper. In a news article by Elizabeth Thomas, who wrote it in 2019, this quote came: cyberbullying is on the rise among middle and high school students and cyberbullying is on the rise among middle and high school students, identifies that with the ease of communication via the internet, there's a negative impact, and that is evident and requires our attention. According to Sam Cook, who is a data journalist for Comparatech, He says cyberbullying may be contributing to the increase in youth suicides. There was also an analysis done by the National Center for Health Statistics, which looked at the same issue, and it revealed that suicides were the second leading cause of death among US residents between the ages of 10 to 34. And this research was done in February of this year. And notably, this particular age group is associated with using social media more frequently than with older age groups. And when I read that, I was really surprised because the age range of the research covered from 10 years to 34 years. So that to me was quite interesting. Very young children, because very young children are on the internet. And so they have the access to that information, and therefore they may become victims to cyberbullying. And so we have to teach our children how to not engage. Sometimes it's really hard, but one of the papers I was reading today has encouraged us to make sure that even if your children suffer cyberbullying, that first of all, they report it to somebody they trust, whether that's a parent or a guardian or a teacher, and they certainly don't engage the cyberbullier. The person who is is doing the bullying, don't engage them, because what you do when you do engage them is that what fuels them to go more, because they have engagement from you, and so they can continue.
Fantastic. Karen, feel free to jump in at any point in time. For those of you just joining us, we're just having some internet issues, so he will turn his video on when he's speaking. So, Madam DPP, first question, a question here for you. And of course, we understand that you cannot speak to any case that is currently ongoing, etc. And so you have to be very pointed with any responses that you give us tonight. So on the screen, you can see the first question. What percentage of internet-related crimes appear in your courts? And do you have any idea of undetected internet crimes in the region?
All right, so in preparation for this, I asked for a certain amount of statistics from the police, just so that we can have an idea of what we have in Barbados. In relation to malicious communication, which is an offense under the Computer Misuse Act in Barbados, when the research was done by the police in the year 2019, there were 36 cases of malicious communication. In the year 2020, there were 72 cases of malicious communication. In relation to fraud crimes that have an internet component, in 2019, we recorded 175 cases of fraud crimes. And in 2020, we recorded 148 fraud crimes. And remember, I always give the caveat, those are the ones that have been reported. That the person sitting at their computer who falls for the scam that I spoke about when I got that on my phone, you've won a car and you've won $80,000, you know, they need this information to collect the money. The person sitting down at home or in their car who may think that that's a legitimate, you know, they legitimately won this money, may fall for that. And so a lot of people do not report these types of crimes out of embarrassment. So I just want to make that caveat when we look at the numbers that the police sent.
And before we take the next question, you know, what's so funny is when I look at my spam folder, there are just so many emails saying that my great-grandfather has won money. If I had maybe 1 penny for every single one of those emails, I probably would be rich right now. But it's not just about inheritances. There are also emails that talk about business deals. And I think it was CBS in the US had reported that a CEO of a Fortune 500 company was duped out of this a large amount of money simply because one letter, I believe, in an email was changed. They were in the middle of this business deal. And because the email was changed, then, you know, they would have wired money not knowing. And they felt it was obligation or corporate social responsibility to share that information because they did not want it to happen to someone else. So I love the fact that you give the caveat that those are crimes that were reported, and there may be a lot more that are not reported. So Karen, I want to come to you there and talk about the importance of emails, and when we're choosing passwords in terms of how we mitigate against these crimes. I cannot stand logging in or trying to sign up for something, and you have to have a capital letter and a common letter and a particular character. But are those things really important, and do they really work in combating phishing and cybercrime?
Yes, those things are super important when you're choosing your email passwords. When you, as you were making reference to just now, some people just it's just the slight changing of a website of where you're going, because you might see, okay, let's say you bank with let's use Republic Bank, and then it might say republicbank.com, but then the email says republic.bank.com, and you don't really check for something like that, or they have a slash where
I think we lost him again. Mr.
banks always tell you is that they're not going to ask for that information via email. They always need to confirm it. Um, for me I'll just use myself as an example. Something that I'm currently working on, even though I sent in the information to the company, they had a, let's say, like another step of authentication where they actually called me over the phone and said, hey, we need to verify this information. So always double check. So one of the things that I will say to people is slow down. The whole thing of a spam or a phishing attack is to make you just react to it right off the bat. So they're gonna try to draw you in really quickly so that you just click on the link and go to where it is that they need you to go. So slow down, read what it is that is there. Yes, it might take a minute or two, but it might save your information, it might save your company, it might save your job, it might save your life. Research the facts, see what is there. If it looks suspicious, give it a check. Make a phone call to your banker and say, hey, did you guys really request this information from me? And let them tell you. And just know that email hijacking is rampant. You are not like, because you're in the Caribbean, you're not excluded from it. Like, all these attacks go all over the place, because I can get an attack and I don't check up, pay attention to it, and click on the link, and from there it just goes through my contacts. So then, Pastor Henry gets an email from me, Sasha gets one from me, Rhonda gets one from me, Jennifer gets one from me, because they're all part of my contact base, and it just goes through. And there are occurrences where that has happened. As soon as it gets into our organization, the email goes out to the entire organization, and then you have your email filters that your IT team would have built up, and having to kick in and hoping not to bring down the entire network. Sometimes we get caught up with the fact that, oh, well, these restrictions too tight, and I can't do this and I can't do that, but it really is for your protection. Let's say that I come up to someone, and I come up to Dr. Sutherland and say, Dr. Sutherland, I really want you to read this information on this flash drive for me. Can you go, like, give it, just read it through and tell me what you think? And she was like, sure, Carol, no problem. We know each other. I trust you with this flash drive. I plug it straight into my system, and then all of a sudden I'm able to download stuff, because she doesn't know what she's actually plugged into her system. There's no checking, no nothing, and no protection of the information that she has access to. So these things are really rampant. So the main thing that I would tell people to do is to, like, slow down, research what it is that is there, like, just fact check, beware of anything you're downloading, and most of the time foreign offers are fake. So if someone tells you they're calling from Russia, just hit delete. So those will be the things that I would tell people to. You just have to, at the end of the day, we just have to be aware. You just have to be aware. And I think out of all those tips that I just did, I can't reiterate it enough to just take a minute and slow down. Sometimes we're in too much of a hurry, and that is what can be to our own detriment.
And if I may,
yeah. No, I was coming to you. I just wanted to say that is exceptional advice.
Excellent.
Especially slow down. I can't tell you how many times I click on something and then I'm like, oh no, what did I just do? So fantastic advice. Yes, go ahead, Ms.
Yeah, so just let me follow on from what Kiran said. So now that we know better, we need to do better. That would be my catchphrase. We know better, let's do better. Because our online reputation and digital footprint is both real and it's valuable. So as Kiran was saying, you don't share your password with anyone. You don't accept any friend requests just because you're bored. You don't know what that's going to lead to next. You don't post anything that you wouldn't want. If you don't want your pastor to see it, you don't want your parents to see it, you don't want your teacher to see it, you don't want your hubby to see it, you don't want your wife to see it, that's enough. That's the guidance, right? Learn about your privacy settings and review them often. As I was preparing for this, that one was especially interesting for me because I don't even do this as often as I should in terms of getting, changing my, at least checking on my privacy settings and reviewing them to make sure the right things are on and the right things are off, and I'm opting out of certain things. And I'll explain that to you. You can opt out of certain things like tagging, face recognition, and geolocation. You don't have to have those on. And especially if it's your teenager, why would your teenager need to have those kind of options on their profile? Okay, it's smart to delete people you no longer speak to. So, you know, little things. I mean, in respect of children, that may change every 3 weeks, but as adults, if we haven't heard anybody in 2 years and we're not interacting with them, why are they still, unless you're tracking their lives or you want to know what's going on in their life right now because that, you know, you're just extroverted like that. I'm not. So, you know, why continue? For somebody you haven't heard 5 years, why don't you review your Facebook profile or your Instagram and just delete those people and just clean up stuff in your life? In other words, just like a spring, just clean it up. I would also advise, think, as Kiran said it very well. I was going to say think before you post or click, but he said it. Take your time, slow down. That's extremely important. When our children or even us as adults, when we see pop-ups that look interesting, like the pop-up that would get me would be a baking pop-up. That's really the only pop-up that I'll go, you know, no kidding, not even a criminal pop-up. If it's a baking pop-up, you got me hooked. And now everybody on YouTube who's watching knows this, but send me a baking pop-up and I may click on it to see how to do the next brownie really, really well. But I'm just giving an example. You know, so it will target what you're looking for, because you may have ordered something on Amazon the other day and you may have ordered like baking supplies. So then when I turn on my computer, I get bare pop-ups that say, check out this now or this baking thing. So those are the kind of things that I would say. Even something as interesting as your profile picture. And I know that young people and adults, they want to look appealing to whoever, they feel good about themselves. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with a good bikini, but it's for the beach. That's just my thinking. So if you're posting all of these pictures with you on the beach, I'm just saying these are just, you know, things that you can think about. You're not to be, I'm not trying to be a prude or anything like that, but there are other people looking at you in the way that you did not intend when you posted that picture. So those are the things that you really have to be careful about, and trust your instincts. If somebody that you has, you know, introduced themselves to you on the internet, online, if it makes you comfortable, trust your instinct that there's something wrong with that. Don't assume that everyone you meet online is really going to be friendly to you or your friends. And do not post photos that can identify you and where you are. I said it and I cannot say it enough. I speak to my children, I speak to my children, I speak to my children, but they are from a generation and an age where everything is exposed. And you just have to keep talking to them and keep talking to them until you grow wary. And then when you grow wary, keep talking to them some more. I had to call a friend, and this is no lie. This is not a child. This is an adult. And I called him and I said to him, I called his name and I said, could you please take down the photo that you put up on Facebook? And he's like, Dee, what's going on? And I was like, because I can see your license number. Why have you posted a photo with your license number on your vehicle? Please take it down. Trust me on this. So he took it down. And then the next week it was back up again. But what he'd done is he blurred the registration number. So he really wanted to post the vehicle, which is good, but he needed to blur the registration number. So those are just some of the tips that I would share right now.
So we have another question from the chat, and then I see Dr. Neff's hand is raised. And if we have the question incorrectly towards the end, Sherry, feel free to unmute your mic. Oh, go ahead, Pastor Henry, sorry. How do you get information about a person or child from off the internet? I can Google my daughter's name and she will come up from something done through school. She's had a case that was dealt with by the law, but I don't know if that's incomplete, but the gist of it is, how do you get information about a person or a child from off the internet?
Okay, this is general information you're talking about. I'm not sure. I think I may have answered that. I'm not sure if the person who's asking was on earlier, but just from gathering different bits of information that you post, whether it's by, I'm not sure if this is what she wants answered, whether it's by photographs or what you like, whether it's by tagging a friend and then you go to that friend's profile pic and you get more information. I just want to be clear what she means. And the last part, I'm not sure, I don't understand the last part of the question. So perhaps the person who asked the question could just clarify a little bit more.
Yeah, I'll let Dr. Neff ask her question while
Okay.
we get Sherry to clarify.
Okay. Oh, it's okay. Sherry. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Neff. Good to see you always. Good to see
Hi,
you.
Mrs. Bobega and Mr.
Hi.
Boyd. Thank you so much for this very enlightening discussion. But here's a question for you. You know, for people in my age group, and maybe even some of you that are younger than I am, the internet is just a new form of technology. You know, I've lived through the slate, you know, and the pencil and all that stuff, mechanical pencils, are all different forms of technology. But the internet, of course, has taken the world by storm. But for the children of today, for my grandchildren, they are digital natives. This is what they know. This is all they know. I see children who are in 8, 9 months old can take their parents' cell phone and they're flipping through, you know. But here's the thing. We're talking about families, making families shatterproof. And knowing that the World Wide Web and this whole digital interface is here to stay, how can we make digital media a force that knits families together rather than something that rips them apart?
Okay. So interesting question. I'm gathering my answer.
I can figure
I
out.
thought it was going to be crime related. So Dr. Neff, you threw me there, but I'm on. I'm thinking about it now. So Jeff,
okay,
you want to go first, Kiran, and then
sure.
I'll go.
Honestly speaking, the first thing that comes to mind is something my wife says all the time: education.
Yes.
You can't be dumb to it. That's the truth. You have to learn together, and sometimes it might mean exposing them to harsh realities. Something I was gonna tag on to what Donna was saying just now is just basically think of nowadays whenever you fill out a US visa form, when you're filling out applications for school, they want to know all your social media handles. So they want to see things like that. So you then educate them and show them, hey, you might think that it's okay to post these things, but they're looking at all these things for jobs. They're looking at all these things for school, and all this information and information. Just now I was just doing a random Google chat on something, and I realized, wait a minute, I know there's two people. I didn't know this article was written. So there's information out there that sometimes we don't know, and we have to educate ourselves, which means that you have to pay attention. And don't think you're too old to learn the technology. Might it take a little longer to learn it? Yeah. But the one thing that I've realized and I've seen is that sometimes they're really adept with using the cell phone, but they're not adept with using the actual computer.
Yeah.
So then that might be a loophole or like a kink in the chain that something might actually get through, because they might click on an email or something and not pay attention to that, but they might have this lockdown because they don't want the parents to know. So if they can lock this down from the parents, then teach them how to lock it down on the computer as well too, while you learn. I would say educate yourselves together, make it a learning
Yes.
experience, so that I make it a family endeavor to say, hey, we just want to make sure that you're protected when you go out there, because these days a lot of children want to go to different universities overseas, and when they're over there, you can't protect them, and they have to know how to protect themselves, and they have to know how to be smart up there. They can't just think that everyone's going to be friendly and stuff, because there are different things that happen while you're overseas, not just technology wise, but mentally as well too, and emotionally. There's a lot of stuff that you're going through, and that can cause another kink in the chain for you to be vulnerable to someone saying, hey, how are you doing? And you might be in a low moment and think this person is for you, but really and truly they're trying to um they're just trying to make use of a vulnerability. And that's all a hack actually is: finding a vulnerability and exploiting it.
And now that Kiran has so ably answered your question, may I just add, what he said in the last part is very important. You can be learning together. So you were just talking about building shatterproof families. So Dr. Neff, even when your grandchildren are on watching something, just curl up behind them on the sofa and ask them, what are you watching today? Can you show Granny how to do so-and-so? Let's watch this together. And if it's something that you can't watch with them, then you have to be worried. You understand? So make what they're doing part of also how you include that into your routine, and say, well, you know what? Granny was looking at the internet the other day, and I saw this thing that I didn't understand. Do you know how to do this? Can you show me how to do this? And you try to be interested in the things that they're interested in. So you now start to get that connectivity that you need for you to engage them in conversations that say, you know what, thanks for showing Granny this, but you know, you need to be careful because, and give them a practical example. So, you know, thanks Kiran for at least stimulating my mind to get to that point that I wanted to make. Thank you, Kiran.
I just want to add something to Dr. Neff that Karen did not speak to. Well, two things really. You know, as much as there are dangers of the internet, technology is a tool to be used. So YouVersion, for example, he has created a Bible study. So I have a sister who's overseas. I am here. You know, we have one child who's here. He might be somewhere else at some point in time, but then we can all come together on whether it's Zoom or whether it's on FaceTime, etc., and we use it. I have a teenager who makes fun of me all the time. It is not nice, but you know what? You allow them so that they feel free to come to you. And so I would say, I want to learn how to do a TikTok. She said, no, mommy, no. Or, you know, so, but I'll get to see her making TikToks with her friends. And she's like, leave it for the young people. So I think you asked a fantastic question. And because we're talking, as you said, about building shatterproof families, it's not just about saying these are the dangers, but using the technology to pull the family together. And simple things like, you know, no phones at the table when we're eating. Let's talk about what happened today, or you use the phone to do something, you know, as a family, whether it's play a game, etc. As I said, whenever I can steal her phone, I'm always going through it to see what are the new apps. I cannot keep up, but you know, I try. When she's on with her friends, I come in and I stick my face in, and her friends think it's hilarious. She is embarrassed to the core. But those I think I find sometimes that those are the things that we have to do as parents, you know, become a bit vulnerable with our children to say, I don't mind, you know, letting my hair down so that you feel comfortable enough to talk. And sometimes that gives them an inroad to speak. It doesn't always work, but just consider doing things a bit differently. So I thank you for asking that question, Dr. Neff.
I'd like to make a comment. Karen said that you're never too old to learn to use the internet, and I totally agree with that. I know she's not going to be worried about me mentioning her age, but my 86-year-old mom, she is a Facebook guru. she's on Facebook more than I am, and she learned the internet probably in her 70s, and she knows how to use it. And I think it's important for us to help the elders learn how to use the technology, because what's happening here in the US is that they are falling prey, the seniors are elders are falling prey to a lot of crime and scams and so forth. They're losing their hard-earned money that they're supposed to use to take care of them in their older life because of these scams that come on and take advantage of the elders, so it's important for them to understand how to use it responsibly and what things to avoid, so that they are not duped into giving up their money and losing their livelihood. So there's my mom right there. Hi, Mom. She's on Facebook more than I am.
Pauline.
And I will say to you, Dr. Sutherland, recently I created an IG reel. I know some of you know what that is. And my first go at it, my daughter laughed at me and she helped me figure out how to do it a little better. But I did create my first IG reel, by the way.
Congratulations. Go ahead, Karen. And after you go, Sherry's going to clarify her question because she's still on, and then Sean is going to make a comment. So over to you, Karen.
I just want to kind of just jump on to what Dr. Neff was saying, only because I think that the comment was really important. I believe with what has been happening in the world with COVID, we really have forgotten the elderly with the technology, and it really hurt me. And everyone on this call who knows me knows that I like to get the message out there. Part of my church background in ministry is that I'm head of production at my church, and it was really sad to hear how many churches didn't use the Oh, there it is now. I'm back. Yeah. As I was saying that that basically it was really hurtful to hear how many churches actually didn't use the technology to still reach the elderly and include them in the church services, but just sat back and said, "Oh well, when all this is blown over, then we'll just have church in person." No, we still had to reach out to our elderly, and we still have to make sure that they're okay, because some of them, as Dr. Neff was saying, might not actually be able to recognize certain scams that are happening, but we as a community might be able to protect them and make sure that they're okay. And that's another way that we become, if we want to put it in IT terms, we become their virus protection, we become their malware protection, we become their firewalls to prevent these things from happening and them being taken advantage of. One of the things that Dr. Sutherland alluded to, that in terms of apps on phones, if iPhones, you can create family accounts on iTunes. So one of the things that I did for my family is that we have one big family account. Yes, our daughter is allowed to download certain things and whatever, but screen time is on, so I know what she's looking at. And sometimes people say, "Oh, well, I just used in this week I just used 2 hours alone for a Snapchat." But think about it. That's 2 hours of you just staring at your phone, talking to people and not moving. That's a whole lot of time. But because the time seems condensed into one, it doesn't seem a bit like a big deal to them. "Oh, well, I'm only at 3 hours for the..." No, cut off the time. If you're sitting at the table, limit it and say, "Hey, after a certain amount of time, this is where you shut off." You have to shut off, because realistically, you have to give your brain a rest. Like, you have to be able to rest totally. And sometimes your brain is keep going because you're looking at this cell phone and all this information, and that is not really helpful to you in the long run.
Okay, so before Sherry clarifies, I just want to say what's in the chat. Pastor Henry says he worked for a very reputable institution, and applicants for employment Facebook posts were often checked before an interview. So it's key what you post out there. As Donna said earlier, if you don't want your pastor to see it, your wife, your husband, your parents, be careful what you post. And then Clarine says, as with anything else, we have to teach our children how to be responsible. If you drive, there are certain responsibilities that come with that. The same rings true for the internet. So I'm going to allow Sherry to clarify her initial question to the DPP. And then Sean, we're going to allow you to make a comment.
Good
Sherry?
night, all. Hi, good night. Thanks a lot. The reason I'm asking is because if I type in my children's name, if I go on Google and I type in Sonia Blackman from Barbados, information comes up on many people, many Sonia Blackmans, but you see the information there as well for my Sonia Blackman. And you can see a picture, or you can see a Facebook if they're on Facebook. You can see where they work sometimes, where they go to school. And when I did that for two of my kids, I saw one picture come up with one of my daughters doing something through school, and then a picture of another daughter with something that was done through church. The reason why it's so concerning to me is because originally one of my daughters would have had an issue. She would have logged onto Facebook with her telephone number, and that person would have stalked her. And we realized how bad it was when she was at bus stops coming from school, and she was being sent a picture of her at this bus stop on her phone by the predator. The reason why I said it was dealt with in law is because it had to go to the law where her phone was then seized and the person was caught, etc. It was dealt with. But I can still go on Google and type in anyone's name or my children's name and something come up pertaining to them. How can I remove that? Obviously, they're both not on Facebook now, so you wouldn't see a Facebook whatever come up. But is there a way that can be removed to help protect a person or your children?
Was that question directed at me?
Not necessarily. It was a question.
No, because that's out of my depth in terms of how you actually get it removed. So it would have to be either Kieran or Sean to answer that question.
The short answer, as Donna kind of said earlier in the program, is no, because the information is disseminated so far and wide. There are programs out there that people will charge you to try to delete and hide your footprint and information, but at the end of the day, you post it and Sasha seizes it, and then it jumps, and then Rhonda sees it and she saves it, and then reposts by Dr. Neff. Like, there's nothing you can really do about that. But what you have to be mindful of is you can't hide them from the world, but you just have to protect them from the world. If they're gonna have Facebook, then make sure that they understand the rules and regulations of having Facebook. You're not going to put personal information out there. You can use a dummy address just for your Facebook profile that has nothing going to it. Doesn't have to be your real email address. You can do different basic little things like that. I have different accounts set up that aren't related to, like, anything that has to do with certain accounts goes to one email address, and anything that is doing with other things goes to a separate email address, because at the end of the day, I'm still the head of my household and my family still has to be protected, and I still need to know what is that's going on. So you just have to, and that's where the education comes in, teaching them the dangers and stuff, because they're all going to want a TikTok, they're all going to want a Snapchat. So you might be protecting them from Facebook, but Snapchat is so elusive that you can barely even shut it down. You can't control it. Like, and I remember trying to do this, and I was like, but this is still getting through. And those are one of those things that, information is still getting out there. TikTok is still getting out there. So you just got to teach them the dangers and just honestly pray that they take it in and that they do the right thing. But as long as they're living under the roof, under your roof, make sure that they're doing the right thing as they grow up.
Sean, over to you. Unmute your mic, Sean. Everyone, this is Sean. He's the owner of Protege Computers. Happy to have you tonight.
Mistake there. I am so sorry, guys. Good night. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, my name is Sean Agard. I have an IT company, and there are just a couple of things I've been listening in to most of the conversation, and there are just a couple of things I wanted to address. Some has been addressed. Kieran just addressed a large extent, and that concerns removal of information from the internet. It is impossible. Okay, it is absolutely not possible, because even if when an item is deleted, say you delete a file from your computer, that file is not really deleted. All that happens is the space where that information was is marked for use. So basically, in computer world, it says, okay, you've deleted the file. It means that that space that was occupied by that file or that bit of information is now available for use by something else. So it can be overwritten. But even overwriting that information does not mean that the information is gone, because there's software that you can buy on the internet for $25, or that you can buy on the internet to recover that information even if it is deleted. In fact, a lot of the software for recovering information is even free. So in terms of removing, you can delete your Facebook account, but you cannot scrub your identity from the internet completely, because even as Kieran was saying, once the information is out there, it is replicated on every device. In order for you to see a photograph on your phone that somebody else posted, that photograph has to be downloaded to your phone. So every time that photograph is viewed across the world, it is replicated. So you took one photo with your phone and you posted it on the internet, and it is duplicated 1,000,000 times as it is seen by each device across the internet. And these devices now, you don't even have to open it. You don't even have to open the picture, but in most cases, by default, it downloads to your device and is present there. So it is impossible. And even if you were able to track down every device and delete it, it would still be recoverable. So this is why the activity on the internet is such a serious thing, right? And that is why security, paying attention, education is the only thing that will protect you properly from being compromised. You have, as Kieran was saying, you have to develop techniques and strategies to protect your information. There are simple ways by using common sense, as Kieran was mentioning, that you could protect your identity, for example, by using email addresses that aren't necessarily linked to you. When I say necessarily linked to you, they're not. You may use them for particular. You have to log into a particular site or something, but you don't want to use the email address that would be connected to, for example, where your online banking is done, for example. So you would protect your online banking by using a completely different identity. And there are things like that you can do. And also for a household environment, you would need IT technician to assist you with, but there are things you can do, for example, like making changes to your making changes to your service providers router, like the flow box or the Digicel box that's in your house. You can make small changes to that, the configuration that will direct traffic through secure servers that will prevent, for example, there's a company called OpenDNS that provide a free service that once you redirect your internet activity through their servers, it prevents any kind of pornography, or by default, there are things like pornography, child trafficking, all those sort of things are filtered out by default. So nobody in your house can access pornography if you are filtering your traffic through their website by default. If you choose to purchase one of their packages, you could even get more granular with your filtering, and you can shut out Snapchat, Facebook. You can shut out anything you want. Those services are available, but like I said, you'd need to engage the IT person to walk you through that. But another point that I wanted to drive home is that in the United States alone, there are at least 500,000 reports every year of children going missing in the United States alone. Child trafficking, human trafficking is a real lucrative business across the world. Exploitation of children is rampant. Like Ms. Barbegard said earlier, it is not, we don't hear much about it here in Barbados, thank God, but it is rampant, and of what they have reported, it is suspected that that is only a fraction of what really occurs. And this is just the United States alone, right? And another point that I wanted us to draw attention to is that free stuff is not good. Most people may need certain services, for example, like the creation of special documents like PDFs and editing certain, being able to do certain things on the internet, like edit PDF documents and manipulate data. And then there are paid programs that will allow you to do these things, but there are also free ones. And unfortunately, most of those free programs that allow you to do important tasks are bundled with information, with applications that compromise your security or invade your security. 99% of the time, if the program is free, even Google, even search engines, they're collecting data. Every search, every click of a mouse costs money. There's a price tag on every click. Every link that you click on, that click has a price tag on it. It may be just of 0.00000 cents, but imagine multiplying 0.00001 cents by 100 million every day, right? And that equates to a hefty price tag, and that is just from people browsing the internet. That is why the internet is so huge. It generates revenue at a level that would blow your mind, and that is why you get, when you engage free stuff and you engage websites and so on, you're generating revenue for people, and that revenue partly comes from you, but you're not aware of it because You didn't have to pull your pocket or put in your credit card at that point in time. But the way how it works is that you pay your service provider, you pay your bill every month, but your service provider has to pay a license to be a service provider. And the traffic that is generated by each click going through these servers all across the world, because don't think that there's a fallacy sometimes that we think that the traffic that we generate is only within our environment. But when you make a request, for example, for google.com, you may be connecting to us. You may think, well, okay, I'm just probably connecting to a server in the United States. You might be connecting to a server in India that is bouncing off of one in Australia, that is bouncing off of one in some other part of the world. And your request for, say, you want to look at the latest Toyota RAV or whatever, that request may bounce through hundreds of servers before the information gets back to you. And each one of those hops is costing, it is generating revenue, and it is requiring payment for somebody somewhere along the way. So sometimes when you download and install a free program on your computer, that program may install other applications that direct your traffic through servers, because each one of those hops is revenue, is money for somebody. Like I said, it may only be, each hop may only be 0.00 something of a cent, but when you have a billion of those hops happening, on a day-to-day basis, it is huge revenue. So free things often come at a price. You have to know, if you're going to use something free, you have to be very, off the internet, you have to be very careful and cognizant as to what it is really doing on your computer or your phone, right? Pop-ups are not good, even if they appear to be benign, or they just, but the fact that a pop-up can appear, and pop-ups come, even organizations like Google and those that we rely on so much, they're collecting information about you, and that information has been sent across the internet. And if you, depending on what your content is, for example, if you're a child and you're looking at, maybe cartoons or something, you see a little pop-up with Pokemon or something, and you go and click on that, and it is designed to hook you and to draw you in based on your interests. And I'm not telling you to not use the internet, but since this discussion is about awareness, we have to be aware.
Dania, yeah, Sean, I'm just going to ask you to pause 1 minute, because we are live on YouTube and it is officially 9 p.m. So I'm going to ask everyone to give their closing comments, but we always say if you want to stay on and we want to just address the 2 questions in the chat, we can do so afterwards. But Mrs. Barbigard, if you could please give us your closing statement. Karen, your closing statement. We will end the live recording, but then we can continue to answer those questions.
Sure.
All I would say is what we've said for the last few hours that we've been on is that you have to be aware. Sean said it just now again. You have to be aware about the instrument that you're in front of, whether it be your device, your computer, your iPad. You have to be aware. There are a whole set of dangers out there. A lot of them are criminal. They reach the threshold of actually being a criminal offense. And so we have to guard ourselves and our children. And the only way we can do that as parents and guardians and teachers and pastors and adults who are responsible or who have responsibility for young children is that we have to educate ourselves so that we know what to guard our children against. If we don't know what's going on, like Dr. Neff said earlier, we don't know what we're supposed to be protecting them against. And I know that we are miles behind them in understanding the technology as it changes so frequently, but at least we need to be cognizant of the fact. And just as we go on our devices and our computers to look for things that interest us, please also use some of the time to go on and research things that we should safeguard ourselves against. So that would be my closing comments. Those would be my closing comments. Thank you, Dr. Sutherland.
Mr. Boyce?
My closing comments would be slow down, pay attention to what it is you're doing. It's the same thing that if you're walking a dark street and you want to pay attention to your surroundings, or you see a dark street and there's a lighted street, go down the lighted street and where there are people. And also to educate yourselves. That's the only way you can really protect yourselves. If you don't know what's out there, then you can't protect yourselves from it. Don't get too scared about what is out there, but educate yourselves to the point where you know that you're not going to post something with your license plate, where your children going to school, all those sort of things onto Facebook and social media, and telling people, well, today I walked down the road by the beach and this and that. So now everybody knows what it is that you're doing on a daily basis. Watch what it is that you post. I think that's the biggest thing. We post too much information out there. We post a lot of our personal opinions as well too, and that can be also a detriment to your workplace, to school for teenagers as they're looking for. I actually had a situation like that with myself and a company recently. I did something. I didn't post anything, but one of the other people who was there, they posted something, and the organizers of it had it all screenshotted and called my boss and was like, "Hey, was all of this about?" So that is just something that you just need to be mindful of. Watch what it is that you post, pay attention, and slow down.
Fantastic. So we've come to the end of another very informative program. We hope that people will really be blessed by this information and that it will be used to bring families together, but to also mitigate some of the risks when it comes to engaging with the technology that we have in our spaces. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, and we look forward in 2 weeks for another program, Real Talk Family Life, building shatterproof families, one brick at a time. Okay, so there are two questions in the chat.